Just wait. It always starts off. Here we go, guys. It's Tim O'Connor, New York State Senate candidate for District 51. This is the heart, the breadbasket, the Rust Belt of upstate New York. I'm looking to represent an area the size of Connecticut. You've heard me say that before, but I'm going to say it again. Hey, guys, I want to point to my shirt back here. You guys wonder why I got a beat up t shirt on my wall. Success is not final, failure is not fatal. It's the courage to continue that counts. And on that note, guys, I've got Jim Ostrowski. He's live with us. Jim is actually taking it to the man, right? I mean, that's what we're doing here. We're going after the big fish, the whole enchilada. So if you don't mind, why don't you tell me a little bit about what's going on with you?
Well, I've been doing election law cases, and I'm busier than I've ever been, but in any spare time, I've been working on filing this complaint against Governor Cuomo. So it's almost ready, and I promised everybody I would file it this week. This week is not going to last much longer, so either tomorrow or Friday, this big baby will be filed. It's right now I got 45. I show you a copy to prove it exists.
That is
45 pages. You see, Cuomo is the lead defendant.
perfect.
It's 10,000 words. I quote Buffalo Springfield. I quote the Magna Carta. I like to juice it up. You know, legal writing does not have to be boring is my motto. So
Yeah.
we make the legal arguments, but we also put some flesh on the bones and talk about the consequences of this reign of terror. So it will be filed this week in the Western District of New York in federal court, and most of the parties and activities are in the Western New York area, but it will have statewide ramifications.
So you're actually going like who are, and I think the right word is respondents. Who did we? Do you mind me asking that? Who did we name as respondents to this?
No, I want them to know I'm coming after them hard. So Andrew Cuomo, the governor, Letitia James, the attorney general, Keith Corlett, the superintendent of the state police, Douglas Randall's a pistol permit judge in Monroe County, Todd Baxter, the sheriff of Monroe County, the county clerk in Monroe because she closed the pistol permit offices, an investigator for the state of New York who was hassling one of the gun stores, and the Empire State Development Corporation, this rather dubious public authority that somehow wormed its way into running New York State's economy, kind of like the Nazis did before World War II, run the German economy in all sorts of murky ways that invite uncertainty and fear and corruption and so on.
So let me just give a shout out to the people that are in the lobby. Please, guys, we're gonna take questions. We want to see the likes, the responses, the shares. We want to get this message out. So if you don't mind, I want to just offer a little piece of it,
Sure.
of your entertainment part of your legal case, right? Sandra Day O'Connor said, some truths are so basic that, like the air around us, they are easily overlooked. Much of the Constitution is concerned with setting forth the form of our government, and the courts have traditionally invalidated measures deviating from that form. The result may appear formalistic in a given case to partisans of the measure at issue, but such measures are typically the product of the era's perceived necessity. But the Constitution protects us from our own best intentions. It divides power among sovereigns and among branches of government precisely so that we may resist the temptation to concentrate power in one location as an expedient solution to the crisis of the day. I can't think of a better quote than that to lead into this.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I was never a huge fan of Judge O'Connor. She was always trying to like split the difference and get very detail oriented about a holding. And I'm more like a hardcore ideologue, so I'm more 3 yards in a cloud of dust coming up the middle. But I thought the quote was perfect. It was quoted by Scalia in the case involving Sheriff Mack, and I tracked it down. It was actually an O'Connor quote, which, of course, Scalia cited correctly. I'm not saying he didn't. But it's a great quote. I also quote the Buffalo Springfield song, There's Something Happening Here. We all know about it. And I was looking for some lyrics that might go along with this lawsuit. And I immediately thought of that song. And the amazing thing is, I thought it was kind of an anti-war song. It's an anti-youth curfew song from the 60s. So given that we're all under curfew, and given the fact that we're sacrificing young people for old people, which is a point I make in the brief, that I'm probably the only one who's ever said that in a legal brief or anything similar to it, but we're sacrificing young people for old people. I thought it was a perfect song. And then the second quote is from Magna Carta, which talks about just being deprived of your property in violation of the law of the land. So those are the opening quotes to set the stage for what is to come.
I think it's great. So I have a lot of friends. We like to talk about suing the government. One of the things that we'd like to know, and I know it's complicated, but I think we want to hear kind of the inner workings of how that might actually happen. How do we get to make a cause of action against our government? How do we petition for redress?
Well, so we have the Constitution, but it wasn't super clear about suing government officials until the post-Civil War era, when although we had the Civil War and the slaves were freed in 1865, obviously after the Civil War, the slaves kind of reverted to almost a serf-like status, and they were being heavily discriminated against by the state government. So Congress, well, first of all, they passed the 14th Amendment, and then the 14th Amendment allows the Congress to pass measures designed to enforce the 14th Amendment. So they passed, I think it's called the Civil Rights Law of like 1871. It's a little obscure, the date. But that is now what lawyers call 32 U.S.C. 1983, which is probably the most famous federal statute, because that's the statute that allows you to sue in state or federal court. We're choosing federal court for reasons that are explained in the complaint. New York state courts are hopeless. Don't get me started. I'll lose my law license before I even want to, because I'm on the way towards premature retirement. So that allows you to file a suit in state or federal court against state officials who, acting under color of state law, violated your rights. So that's the statute. The statute doesn't create any rights other than the right to go to court. The Constitution supplies the substantive law that was violated, and that's why you're suing. So in this complaint, what we've been trying to do is wait until we could put all this stuff together in one ball of wax, and everything came together pretty nicely. So under the First Amendment, we're suing over the right of public assembly and the right of freedom of religion, which have been violated. The Second Amendment, we're suing under the closing of the pistol permit offices. We think we have a case going, Libertarian Party v. Cuomo, same tyrant. It's now pending in the Second Circuit. We challenge the entire pistol permit regime, but if you're going to have a pistol permit regime, it has to be open. If it's not open, then you don't have a right to bear arms. So, and then the closing of the gun stores, and it's the firing pin is the store that's closed there in Genesee County. So we got the Second Amendment. Now you move over to the Fourth Amendment. There you've got the mask requirement, which is a violation of your physical integrity, just like, you're kind of being mugged by being forced to wear this silly mask, which is really designed for surgeons not to sneeze on their patients. It's not really designed for this.
That thing, it feels oppressive,
We're not putting it on the right way. We're supposed to throw them out. We're not throwing them out. Who's going to throw them out? That's stupid.
Yeah.
They really don't. I'm not saying they have no protective value, but they also have negatives. I'm not going to go into all the things, but we weren't designed to have a mask on, and it's not proven that it's a net positive. I'm not saying that it can't stop a germ here and there, but it's so stupid, particularly now, to have everybody bopping around with a mask. It's really just, at some point you have to go beyond like the syllogisms and the arguments and say, this is really dumb, people. I'm not going to argue with you anymore. Take your effing masks off.
Yeah. I feel like it's almost being used as this tool for keeping people divided, right? You hear stories about people popping off at other people in a store because they don't have a mask on, or making some snide comment about wanting to, claiming injury because you don't have this mask on. If the masks work, then why do we have to worry about whether I have one on or you have one on? If your mask works for you,
right?
Why do I need to wear one? Just to appease your fear?
It's not a problem. You wear. If I don't want to wear one, I won't wear one. And look, I mean, I said in the complaint that all the stores I go into say you have to wear a mask because of the state law. None of the stores I go into, and I go to Wegmans and the standard places around Buffalo that everybody goes to, none of these stores required a mask. Now they do. So if Wegmans wants to make you wear a mask, as a libertarian, I have to say, fine. But it's not Wegmans. Wegmans is just kowtowing to the state government. So I don't care if you wear a mask or not. Don't point a gun at my head and say I have to wear a mask, because that's why God gave me that thing between my ears, so that I don't have to be told what to do by your effing gun. That's the libertarian argument. That goes back to like Ayn Rand, but 300 years ago. I mean, we all have a mind. That's why we have a right to liberty. That's the libertarian argument. It's really simple, and it's never really been refuted.
Yeah, and like Glenn's saying right here, making him wear a mask to go into a store can actually create a health problem for him. And I know after I wear mine, I went into a bank. They insisted I wear it. I had to sit there for 45 minutes. By the end of that 45 minutes, I felt like I was choking. So we look at Glenn here. It can send him into an asthma attack. Why do you want to do that to this guy?
Totally agree. There is like a medical exemption. What are you supposed to do? Put a badge in your back, on your chest, saying I have an exemption? You got to argue with some security guard. I have an N95. I've had them around the house for years, and people who think I didn't take this thing seriously. On January 28th, I sent an email to my family saying, you better get masks, goggles, and gloves, because we don't know what we're looking at here. But the N95 is so efficient that I feel like maybe I'm just paranoid, but I felt like I was getting lightheaded. You're breathing, you keep breathing in your carbon dioxide. And I read the article. I read everything, by the way.
Yeah.
I read everything. I have to, if I'm going to be shooting my mouth off like I do. So, carbon dioxide is so small, it goes through the mask. I don't give a crap about your study. I'm telling you, when I have the mask on, I feel lightheaded. I don't feel like I'm getting proper air. And I've got a stupid mask on my mouth. I'm not. Don't give me your science. The science. There's no such thing as the science. That's
in capital sometimes. In capital, they'll hit you with it, right? They'll be like, science. Like there's
science is. Science is trusting your own judgment, using common sense, seeing what's in front of you, and using logic. We're all scientists. So my science says that this mask is bad for me. Show me the study that says I'm wrong. There is no study. It's bullshit. Oh, no. Can I swear?
Yeah. As a contractor, there are times when I want to wear a mask, but I want to keep that as limited as possible. And because I can feel that it's restricting my breathing, because I can feel that it's not that good for me. It's better than a pound of sheetrock dust coming into my lungs because that gets all raspy. But I know that it's not the same as working without it.
That's what a mask is for. It's for lead. It's for dust. It's for a surgeon not sneezing on a patient whose internal body has opened up for surgery. That's what it's for.
Yeah. And I don't think we're going to try to take a stand against people. Like my wife is a frontline worker, and to do her job, she's got to wear a mask because she's protecting at-risk individuals. Right. I don't think any of us, we're all kind of reasonable and rational about it, like, but the compulsory piece of this always takes people aback. The threat. Do you remember the threat to come get ventilators? This guy was.
Yeah, we hit that in the bud. Steve Filano sent out a notice saying, "No, don't do that." They backed down on that so fast. It was funny because not to get ahead of ourselves, but libertarians have to understand the state is inherently weak. The state. I never actually thought about this before, but the old scene in The Wizard of Oz, which we've all seen, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. When you think about it, the state is that man behind the curtain shouting out the stuff and scaring us on the big screen. The state is intrinsically weak, and the people are intrinsically strong. We're just disorganized, and we don't know we're strong. But when there's any pushback, any of these dictators, the Bolsheviks had what, like 5,000 people? If there was any pushback, a couple of guys with some 50 cal machine guns could have taken out those bastards. Hitler could have been stopped early on with a little bit of resistance. The state is intrinsically weak, people. Don't be afraid of the state. They're just a bunch of gutless cowards hiding behind, badges and guns. And we got more guns than they do.
As libertarians, one of the things we notice though is that what they do is pit us against each other. The pitchfork guys say the torch guys want to take their pitchforks, and before you know it, those guys are fighting. And I think we see that. I think that's how they are effective. And when you look at the Democrats and the Republicans, and they have these classic continuous arguments over almost the same thing, to keep us arguing over the same thing and keep their power in place, right? Isn't that what they're doing? Don't they just manipulate us constantly to keep fighting?
Yeah, divide and conquer is an ancient strategy, but I think that I wrote a book called Progressivism: A Primer. It was published in 2014. And I posted on Facebook, I don't know, like 10 days ago. I said, I hate to brag, but my friends would say, yeah, that's funny. I think I nailed it. It's fear is at the center of modern politics. It's not evidence or logic. If it was evidence or logic, when you disagreed with them, they wouldn't say, you want to kill grandma. It's like, that's not an argument. You're arguing. Fear is at the center of modern politics. Fear is at the center of progressivism, which is the ideology that dominates the country. It dominates both parties. I think the Democrats have it a bit more than the Republicans do. But because fear, it's almost like a mathematical formula. Fear equals government, money, and power. Fear equals F equals GMP. Fear equals government, money, and power. It's a mathematical formula. So the more fear they can engender, the more power and more money they get. And it's the politics of fear. We're seeing it play out in the last 2 months.
I feel like and I don't want to discount what you're saying, but I feel like we've been seeing it play out for years. We've had people enraged over politics, over minuscule disagreements, they start threatening you or accusing you of wanting to kill, like you said, wanting to kill grandma, push granny over a cliff, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Every argument against opening up the economy that is brought to me on my Facebook page, and I love to talk and I love to debate politics.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy talking to people that disagree with me. Guys, that's real, okay? So pay attention out there. I like talking to people that disagree with me. But the threat that because I want the economy open, and I'm not willing to ignore the economic comorbidity of closing down the economy and watching my friends starve, they say I want to kill my family members. I don't even know where to go with that kind of conversation. What do you say to stuff like that?
It's really difficult to grasp, and I say that as somebody. I've written a book about it. I've studied it. I've been studying progressives for 45 years. It took me a long time to kind of come up with the theory, but the progressive is engaging it's in a form of therapy. And the therapy is they feel that for every human problem, there's a government solution. Now, this is not a rational philosophy. So that's why you can't argue with them. When you try to argue with them, and I've had 1,000 arguments with progressives, and every single one of them ended up the same way. And that's why I guess I'm a dunderhead. It took me a long time to realize you can't argue with these people. They get upset. Well, why do they get upset? So that's why I formulated my theory, which is that progressivism is a form of self-help therapy whereby people work through the angst of life by positing a government solution, which is a myth and imaginary, but it makes them feel better. So you're dealing with people who they need to propound a government answer to all human problems, and that makes them feel better. So it's not, progressivism is not an argument. It's a psychological syndrome. So you can't argue with them. All you can do is expose the psychological syndrome and hope that somehow they will say, wow, I'm not being rational. I actually have a psychological syndrome, and maybe I should have a different approach to politics based on reason and fact and logic. So far, it's not working, but I have sold 11,000 copies.
All right. So it's like, it reminds me of like scream therapy. Do you remember that from the 70s?
Yeah, I heard about it.
Yeah. For, purporting to scream the rage out of your body and be able to function better. That when I see some of the comments that I see, it just reminds me of scream therapy, where you're just popping off and losing your mind.
Well, yeah, and the reason why everything gets so hostile is A, you're challenging them, but they don't have an argument, and B, you're bursting their bubble of therapy. Like you're saying, well, you're talking to people and they realize, what you mean, my therapy doesn't work? You're taking my therapy away. I need this therapy. I need to know when there's a school shooting that if Congress puts some words on paper and calls it a bill, and the cartoon about how to make a bill, and then the president signs his name, ink on paper, I've solved some actual human problem. When you burst that bubble that it's all bullshit therapy, they get really pissed at you, because now they have to go out and actually solve the underlying problem, which is, why do some human beings want to blow the brains out of other human beings? You don't have to deal with that difficult problem by passing a bill and signing it and docketing it with the clerk of the House or whoever, the Secretary of State, wherever bills go to die. I don't know. So it's all bullshit.
I just wish more die before they impact our bottom line, right?
Go Bills, by the way.
What's that?
Go Bills.
Yeah, go Bills. Yeah, that was for you, the Western New Yorker. I'm a big Bills
fan. Huge Bills fan. Less so in recent years, but over the years, gigantic. I still think we beat the Giants because they cheated by faking injuries. Okay, that's how big of a Bills fan I am.
Yeah,
I've not recovered from the first Super Bowl loss.
I'll be honest. I kind of almost lost my love when they benched Flutie for
I love Flutie.
For what's his face?
Johnson.
Yeah, Rob Johnson. Rob
Johnson was one of these guys on paper, perfect athlete.
Yeah,
play football on paper. I love Doug Flutie. Absolutely loved him. My kind of guy, totally.
He was just so determined. So Jim, one of the other things that you've had some big successes that the people that are listening to us tonight would like to hear about, like your book, for instance, and some of the other cases that you fought for the Second Amendment and things like that. I think these guys, these folks would love to hear about that stuff.
Well, it's funny because I started writing on a professional basis in law school. I was doing I was writing for the professors in the law school, so I've been kind of writing, a long time. I was making money from writing before I was a lawyer, and I've written stuff over the years. I would write, divided like internet, pre-internet. So pre-internet, I was doing like bar association reports and think tank studies, but I would send out op-ed pieces, magazine articles. I got one published in the Wall Street Journal. But eventually I said, I hate editors and publishers. So then Lou Rockwell got started in 1999, and I started right before Lou started putting LouRockwell.com online. I kind of felt like, I think I pretty much said everything I have to say. I have nothing else to write. So Lou starts publishing this stuff in 1999. And I'm reading it as like, man, these guys are having a lot of fun here. So I wrote an article. I thought it was kind of like a satirical article. It was kind of out there. And I said, I don't know if this is good enough. So I stuck it in the drawer. And then about 3 months later, I sent it to Lou. And in those days, the internet was a little different, but Lou had ratings at that time. It was the most popular article of the day or week. And it was like the article of the day on WorldNet Daily. And then there was some other site that was big at the time, which has since faded. So I said, Emerson has this great quote. I love Emerson. He said, in the work of every genius, we recognize our own rejected thoughts. So part of the problem with a lot of people is that you don't have confidence in yourself. You figure like, it can't be any good if I wrote it. And that's a particularly Buffalo disease, by the way. Buffalo has a very collective low self-esteem, and that's one of our problems here. So I said, let me get this thing out. Maybe it's good. And so that article went well, and I just started writing. And then I started writing a lot of columns for Lou and the Mises.org, Mises Institute as well. And then I figured, how do we monetize this thing? And I said, I wrote a big essay about a Rothbardian analysis of Buffalo, which is 25,000 words. And I said, what am I going to do with this thing? Maybe I'll publish it in like the local Art Voice. Maybe I'll put a little pamphlet out. And I said, you know what? Go big or go home. I put together this book of my best articles plus this major essay, which had never been published before. And it was called Political Class Dismissed. And that was 2004. And that was my first book. And since then, I've written like a total of 7, and I don't know, hundreds of other articles and reports. And I had writer's block in 1999. I said, I don't have anything else to write. Now, at my age, I've got 7 or 8, maybe 10 book projects, depending on how you define them. I've got more book projects than I think I can write, and I'm working on one or more of them at any given time. So if you ever think you have writer's block, get over it and just have confidence. So I've done that. I'm getting out of the law slowly but surely. People don't believe me, but it's true. I'm going to be writing. I have some major book projects and some sort of I call them mini books, like my book on, if you hold this up, the Second Amendment Works. I call that like a mini book, but the truth is, it was really hard to write. And that just came out before the coronavirus. My biggest book is Progressivism, a Primer, which has sold 11,000 copies in spite of being completely ignored by the media. And it's just guerrilla marketing, grassroots people. And I'm going to write 2 more really big books and a bunch of smaller books. My final book is going to be a book about what I call archism, which is kind of a neologism. I never, libertarians are always defending themselves. And I know as a trial lawyer, it's much more effective to attack. So I said, what are we fighting, essentially? And there really wasn't a word for it. If there's not a word for it, you've already lost. So I said, I have a word for what we're fighting, and it's called archism. And the great thing about the word is people say, what the hell does that mean?
Yeah.
It's great because they don't have a preconceived notion. They actually have to think about it. So that's going to be my final book. But before that, I'm hoping to rip off a lot of smaller books.
Yeah.
I have 7. I hope to have 15, 20 before I pass from this mortal coil.
Yeah. So one of the things that libertarians do battle, right, is the media isn't interested in our position. They're invested in propping up one side of the story and then kind of letting the other side argue their side and then going back and propping up that same side of that story. They seem to be on some level suffering from what you were talking about earlier. So one of the ways we battle that, right, is I can reach a guy like you and we can present our side of the story right here on Facebook. We can present it on YouTube. I can reach Larry Sharp via email. He's had me on his show. There's a possibility he's going to come on my show, which would be like, it would be epic for me, right? It would be epic for the people that are supporting my candidacy. We in Senate District 51 feel like we haven't mattered to politicians for decades. All they do is talk about making budgets, meeting budgets, and then fighting over minutia like they're actually going to solve a problem and make things better. And we've seen our children leave. I have a daughter, actually, Jim, that's a lawyer, but she was not interested in coming back to New York State. She moved to Virginia. She's in Richmond. She's on the front line of the legalizing marijuana and the telemedicine industry. She got herself in a very interesting law firm, and I'm very happy for her. I did always want her to come back here and help, like a guy like you, sue New York State, because there's so many issues. We have an entire county to the south of us that they buried 5 towns to build a reservoir, and they have been oppressing that town since the 50s. Okay, that whole county is oppressed. They take their land, Delaware County.
Okay.
They take their land and they retire it. They buy it up. They are supposed to provide services in return for the water. The services that they provide are legal enforcement of the rules that they've applied. And it's like, and so sometimes they buy somebody a new septic system or something like that, but they've been crushing businesses over there, and they've been chasing people out of there for 2 generations, 3 generations
Is this the state of New York that's doing this, or an authority, or?
Oh, New York City, the New York City authority.
The New York City, what I call Sardine Can City.
Yeah, Sardine Can City. I mean,
their water supply.
The next COVID is gonna, I mean, people got to realize that place it's not a sustainable lifestyle, right?
Well, we need to split the state. I mean, there's no political road to doing that, but this has obviously got to be done, because this virus is largely a New York City problem, because again, they live like sardines.
Yeah.
And they're on top of each other. I lived there for 8 years, so I'm kind of an expert on New York City.
I visited like 4 or 5 times, but I'm an upstate New Yorker.
Yeah. Well, upstate is a beautiful part of the country with beautiful people. We're just a colony of Manhattan, and that has to be severed, or we're never going to straighten this ship out.
I agree with you. So we're getting out to about 45 minutes. That's generally the amount of time that we should devote to these things. I hope that you will join me again in the future, and we'll have this big, huge celebration of success, about how this case paid off.
So what we're going to do, we're going to file the suit. Now, filing a complaint in and of itself doesn't really do anything. It could be years, but the week after that, we're going to file a motion for a preliminary injunction, and the judge is going to have to make a decision. Are we right or are we wrong? And so there's going to be some very fast action on this.
I will cover it on my Facebook page. If it doesn't make the news, which I think it should, okay.
I think it will get a lot of attention.
Yeah, we'll cover it. Everybody will cover it. We'll get the word out there. And anything I can do to help.
I appreciate it.
Build momentum.
I think when people read the complaint, I hope they'll like it. I have spent so much time on this thing, and it's really a product of 36 years in the law, being a libertarian for 41 years. My father was a judge. He was a brilliant man. He taught me a lot of tricks that I use today. And hopefully people will like the product and they'll get behind it. It's not just a legal document. It's a political statement.
Yeah.
It's designed to educate people as to why we have these rights and why they're important. And I hope people will get behind this project and support
it. You gave me some excerpts of it to kind of for the show, which I really appreciate. And I want to tell everybody that when this complaint comes out, and I believe complaint is the right word, but I'm not sure.
It's called a complaint.
When it comes out and we can make it public for everyone, it is what you're saying. It's an interesting document. It's an important document, and it's timely. And let's just, before we finish up, let's go back to the fact that we are sacrificing today. We're taking our children's future away. And they are going to be so upset when they figure that out. The repercussions will be massive. Right?
My daughter is graduating from Sarah Lawrence College. She went to Oxford last year for her junior year. She's been going to school since pre-K, and she doesn't get a graduation. I'm just so angry about that.
Yeah.
It's so sad. And the Little League baseball, I walk by my high school. I have not gone far. I live across the street from my high school.
Yeah.
St. Joe's. I walk by the baseball diamond every day on my walk, and I look over and I said, there should be boys playing baseball there.
Yeah.
We boomers had our youth. There was a big flu epidemic in 1968. I guarantee you, nobody mentioned it. Okay. The kids who were a few years older than me, they had a party called Woodstock. So we boomers had our youth, our greatest generation parents, whose own youth was very difficult through the Depression, World War II. My father, when he was 18, was in France fighting Nazis. So they spoiled us. They wanted us to have our youth, and by golly, we did, probably in excess, and they spoiled us. But we're taking away our children's lives, our teenagers, our college kids, our young people. How are they going to meet anybody and date?
Are
we going to have a future in this country? People better wake up, get over their fear, and grow up and get back to work. Reopen.
We do not have the right to take what we've taken away from these kids. We don't have the right.
No, it's sick.
I'm old enough to see the end of my life. If this virus makes that a little bit shorter, I still don't want to take everything away from my kids, man. I don't want that to happen. Jim,
I've had my life. I've had a full life already. I'm not going anywhere, but it's not about me. It's about young people. Sorry, folks.
The whole reason why I got into the Libertarian Party, I was an independent my entire life, figuring I could pick and choose good issues. But I realized at some point we need a wedge to break these two parties apart. And we need young people to get interested. And so that's one of my campaign goals, is to get young people interested in their local government, and then come take my job when I win this Senate thing, right? take it. I don't care. I want you to have it. I'm doing this for you guys. How can people help you out with this lawsuit? Is there a way that we can?
Well, when I post the lawsuit, probably Friday, people need to read it and get it around, and urge people to read it, and then there'll be we're up against a legal colossus in the Attorney General's office, and they'll probably have private law firms representing some of these people. I've done this before. I've been up against like 8 or 9 Wall Street firms. I've beaten them at some point, but then we lost it in the Court of Appeals, even though we were right, 5-2. That's the old pork lawsuit. But so people have an opportunity. Like I got $50 today from a lady. She just said she's going to make a donation. Do you want? How are you going to take it? I said I only take gold or Bitcoin. After the joking was over, I said I'll take a donation, but don't give me too much money. I looked at the check; it was $50, and I took it. So there'll be opportunity to make small donations. Steve Filano's site, 2AWNY, if you type that in /COVID, he's got a donation button.
Let me put that up on the screen.
2ANY.com.
2ANY.com.
2ANY.com /COVID. I hope this works.
That's okay. It'll get them close. And if they need help finding it, you and I will work that out. We'll
have all that information around. I've got a second lawyer on board. I'm going to be in touch with a larger firm to handle more complicated stuff down the pike if it gets into discovery, depositions, or a trial. So we'll have a legal team. I'm too damn old to do it myself anymore. I remember fighting one case. I walked into the deposition room. There were 10 lawyers on the other side, and it was me. And I actually beat them, but that was younger in those days. So we'll have a legal team of some old birds like me, and then some young guys with energy to fight this battle.
It makes me want to come in and scribble stuff on paper for you, like. From the bottom of my heart, and I think I'm representing the guys, the folks in my audience. We want to thank you from the bottom of our heart that you're going to take this issue on.
I appreciate it. One quick thing, we may be having a press event in Rochester Monday, so look for that.
Okay, if I can share that out, whatever, I'll do it.
There's a rally in Rochester on Saturday, sponsored by Shannon Joy.
Okay,
radio lady, and she's fantastic. And I'm speaking, and Steve Filano and one of our plaintiffs is speaking too.
Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you guys for the video, likes, shares, reactions. That's going to help get this word out. We're going to help get Jim's message out. We're going to fight the power, right? Isn't that what being a libertarian is all about? Yeah,
we're going to, what they've done is so bad. This rule by decree power, it's what Hitler did. We think of Hitler in a cartoonish way. There was a time when Hitler was a Democratic politician. There was an emergency, and the legislature gave him emergency powers. There was a time when Mussolini was, kind of a Democratic politician, and there was an emergency, and they gave him rule by decree powers.
Yeah.
So the problem with history is we look back at it backwards. You have to look at history forwards. Sometimes this stuff sneaks up on people and they don't do anything about it till it's too late. You can't stop totalitarianism when there's a knock on the door in the middle of the night and a cattle car in front of your house.
I agree.
You gotta stop it now.
I agree. Again, thank you for being on. Thank you for your effort here. If we can help them out, the likes, the shares, maybe a little bit of money when the opportunity presents itself. Don't forget, I might need a little bit of money for my Senate campaign. Let's make this all happen, guys. We're fighting the power and we're fighting for the future. So again, Jim, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun. Anytime you want me back.
All right, buddy. Thank you. That's great. I appreciate it.
Okay, bye.
Have a great evening.
You too.